welcome back to All Abilities No Filter. I'm Jake, and kind of from what you got to hear from our intro, we are so excited for today's episode. We have a guest that has a very unique and inspirational, a terrific, and all types of adjectives you can probably put on his story. And I think a lot of people can kind of take from, well, like I said, his unusual journey to find something that really works for his son and their journey together. And I think he's going to talk about how they both got stuff out of it, but also how they really had to go through some tough times and some struggles and some just really big bumps in the road to get there. And we're so excited for him to be able to give us his story and just kind of talk about how that's impacted him, impacted his outlook on different approaches and things like that. But with just getting right into it, Robert DeLena, how are you doing today? And thank you so much for being with us too.
Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's a good story. I hope people enjoy it.
Absolutely. Well, let's just kind of hop right into it. Like I said, I don't want to waste any time. So just kind of give us your backstory. Tell me kind of what has led you here, what's kind of put you on this path, and just kind of what makes you tick, brother? What's going on?
So, a lot of ways, I'm kind of the staple of the American dream. I grew up in a city called Revere, Mass, which is a really blue collar town right outside out of Boston, right near Logan Airport. Planes used to fly over my house that I could have hit with a tennis ball every 30 seconds. We grew up having to stop every conversation when the plane flew over, and then we'd restart the conversation. My parents were, hardworking people and wanted the best for us and really stressed education. I also happen to be a pretty good baseball player. I know the Greenville Drive from there. I'm a Red Sox fan.
Yes, sir.
We know
Absolutely.
all our stars start down there. So I played college baseball. I went to boarding school because of baseball, and then went on to play college baseball. And I met my wife at college, and she was sort of the Philadelphia version of me. She grew up really the hard way. Her dad died young. Her mom, took a job at a private school so she could get educated. She was a field hockey player, and she had done really well. We ended up both going to the same law school, end up being lawyers, and we all of a sudden we had this sort of life that we thought we would have. We had jobs that we wanted kids, and Ryan comes along, baby number one, and everything changed from that point on. And in some ways for the better, because he was a really fun kid to parent. He was super high energy and really bright, but he never listened. He did whatever he wanted to do, and he was just a really challenging kid in a lot of ways that we didn't realize how challenging until the first day of preschool when I left him there. And then when I went to pick him up, they said, "Can you guys come back tomorrow for a meeting? We'd like to talk to you." And I can keep going, or if you want to interject another question. But
no, absolutely. So all his behaviors, they started really early, except preschool. So you're thinking, golly, you're thinking maybe 7, 8 years old is when he really saw those negative behaviors starting to kind of show themselves.
Even as a 1-year-old, he was always a kid that as soon as he could sit up, he tried to crawl. As soon as he could crawl, he wanted to walk. As soon as he could walk, he wanted to run. And he was very emotional if he didn't get his way. He was really he was a 0 to 10 kid. That's what my wife used to call him. When things were great, Ryan was the best kid in the room. If he wasn't happy, he could make everybody unhappy.
Oh man.
And he was the kind of kid, when he went to a playground, I knew I was going to end up having to apologize to somebody at some point, because he was going to be a problem. But I looked at him and said, he's going to either run a company someday because he's just driven and he's smart and he won't take an answer, or he's going to be living under a bridge muttering to himself because he needed everything to be perfect. And when it wasn't, I could just see how that would cause him to devolve. So, I was worried, but I wasn't really worried yet. And then that first day of preschool, he was 3 years old. This was like a introduction to preschool. It was a summer camp kind of thing. And she right away wanted to have a pediatric neuropsychologist observe him, which we agreed to. Now, part of growing up in the Boston area, we're Harvard's in our backyard and all these great colleges, and every doctor has gone to an elite university. And, so we were sort of, I think, that pedigree. I think we were impressed by that because we had sort of grown up in that system. And so, we looked at ourselves and said, we're bright people, but we don't know anything about, the brain of a 3-year-old. Maybe somebody knows more than us. So we said yes to all that stuff in the beginning. And the neuropsychologist right away identified him. She didn't really want to put a label on it yet, but she took out a piece of paper and drew a circle and bisected it down the middle and said, Ryan is really smart in the left half of his brain, and he's very weak in the right half. And we're like type A people, so it looked at him and said, all right, maybe he's just the steroid version of us. He just is he's just a high intense kid who,
Yeah.
it makes sense. That just led down the pathway where she eventually met with us and said, if you don't have a label, I can't really push the town for services. So I got to call it something. And then she starts thumbing through I know you work in this field, the DSM, right? The
Yep.
Diagnostic Statistical Manual. She's thumbing through that. This was the
Mhm.
DSM-5 back then, trying to find something to call it. Now, back then, this is like 2002, 2003, you know, autism spectrum you were starting to hear a little bit about, but it wasn't
Mhm.
really as defined as it is now. You were kind of
Yeah.
screened in for autism or screened out. And Ryan was obviously not autistic. He just talked way too much. But she
Sure.
found this diagnosis called pervasive developmental disorder, not
Mhm.
otherwise specified. Everybody refers to it as PDD-NOS.
Mhm.
And it's funny, like as we've gone down this journey, I meet hundreds of kids who have that diagnosis. None of them have anything in common. They're all
Yeah.
completely different. It's this bucket category that they
Yeah.
use to just get you stuff from your town or get you stuff from the
His
government.
services. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm a pretty cagey guy. I mean, I understood the game, and I was like, all right,
Mhm.
fine, call it whatever you want to call it. But what that did is it really set him on this pathway to get really nudged out of the public school system and into a
Yep.
therapeutic school.
Mhm.
And at this point, Ryan would have been going into kindergarten, so he's about 5 years old. He gets nudged out of the town preschool and he gets pushed into this therapeutic preschool. And we went to visit and we went in with open eyes, and they had everything we thought would benefit. It was small classes. They were, they previewed everything. They scripted things, things that he was struggling with, transitions, emotional stuff. But the one part they described was when he got dysregulated, they would hold him. They called it a hold. Well, what that turned into, and I know is, he was restrained multiple times a day. They
Sure.
taught us how to restrain him at home. They encouraged us to hire a special needs nanny who was ABA trained, and she knew how to restrain kids. And all of a sudden, this kid's life in kindergarten was being manhandled like 10 times a day. And when somebody's 4 or 5 years old and they come home from school and say, they tried to kill me, they tried to choke me, we gave it some credence, but we just assumed he was exaggerating. And
Yeah.
okay, well, that you don't like when they put you in the hold, and you
Mhm.
must have done something. What did you do? But then as time wore on, and I'll fast forward a little because it's a long story. But yeah, the 2 or 3 years we were doing it at home, Ryan would act up. Ryan had a sister at this point, who's a couple years younger. They would get in a fight. Ryan would end up being restrained by dad, me. And, I'm on the floor wrestling with him, and we're having this like literal wrestling match in our house. And then I was like, why did that start again? Like, why did you, what, I forget, you got in trouble for something. And like an hour later, we're still doing this. Like, this is
Yeah.
dumb. This is a
Yeah.
really terrible system for parenting. And
Yeah.
we stopped doing it at home. We refused to do it. And we started to push the school and say, are you sure this is the right way to, like, maybe there's another way? And I found when
Yes.
I used humor at home, or if I just changed the subject, or took him out of the room, or went for a ride, or did something, like everything was okay. And like, why do I have to do this restraint thing? I don't even get what it's supposed to do. Does it make him make better decisions the next time? No, he
Right.
just remembers that he was on the floor. So
Yeah.
they're fighting the school. The school will not give in. They had their system. This is how they did things. They
Yeah.
told us he was probably schizophrenic because he couldn't appreciate
Mhm.
that these restraints were meant to help him. And I kept saying to the director, yeah, let me lay on top of you for a half hour and you
Yeah.
tell me this is meant to help you. So, listen, I get it in some systems. If a kid is especially severely autistic, if he's going to put his head through a plate glass window, you've got to get your hands on him. You've got to stop that from happening.
Sure.
I completely respect that system. And I've seen schools where the choice is either restraint or they call the police. That's a terrible system too, because both of those just are bad, right? I get it. I believe me, I get it. For Ryan, it was the wrong system. He just fought back too much. His natural inclination, which I knew from when he was a baby, was to fight back, to never give in. He would stay on that floor until the end of the day if it had to be.
Yeah.
And I kept saying to the school, like, can we try something else? Well, they wouldn't try anything else. I ended up just pulling him out one day. I went in one day. He was all covered in, marks. He was crying. I grabbed him by the hand. We walked out the door. I called my wife and I said, he's never going back to that. And I swore school again. And she said, well, we don't have enough school. What are we going to do? And I don't care. We're going to figure it out. And so that led to a couple other schools and a couple other things along the way. And and each school was a little better. The town would try to find one where they restrained them slightly less, or and we did find places that were a little bit better, but they wouldn't take them back to public school, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I wanted to just go back and say, how about no harm, no foul? This was our fault. We made this stupid decision. Let's take the kid back. He's gonna be fine. Just and they would not give in. School would not.
Yeah.
Would not give in.
And it sounds like he's going to meet aggression with aggression. And it really sounds like he kind of almost identified that as their relationship with the staff. It's like, okay, we're going to go round for round. That's going to be our relationship now. And it was just kind of instinct for him. And the kids that I've worked with a lot in the past are kind of the same thing. When they're programmed to know when the relationship with us is we're going to go 0 to 100 and just fight, it just becomes the norm for them. There is no that ease of escalation to where all the de-escalation tools that are supposed to be used just get forgot about. They're sitting there ready to go all the time. And we have to train staff a lot of the time is if you have the mentality up when I see this kid, I'm going to go ahead and just start taking off my jewelry, taking my earrings out, whatever, because I know it's going to happen. They feel that. They feed off of that energy. That's crazy. And they know.
Men in particular, it's when you get into that wrestling match, like it's a natural instinct. You want to win, right? You're a guy.
Yeah.
It's like I found very few male staff along the way who could really stay, like even keeled and emotionless.
Sure.
And the women's staff seem to do a little better at it, but even then, it's like nobody wants to be touched. Like I think it's like
no. That's the thing is if you gave Ryan the option of not being restrained, he's probably going to take that route. If an option was given, obviously there's a trigger going on. Always look to get that trigger out of there. And just asking Ryan, hey, what was the trigger? What's going on? Let's take a walk. Let's take a break. Let's get out of here. And eventually he's going to relate that to the trigger is there it is. Has to be removed without hands on me. And it's always so forgotten. We teach a lot when restraints are going to be given, you have to sit and answer questions to yourself. One, is this kid capable of really hurting me or hurting someone else? And if they're a kindergartner, the answer is no. Like if I don't need to restrain a young kindergartner because they're not going to hurt me, an adult. Also is like the threat of media. Some kids you get that they're going to run their mouths all the time. They're going to threaten all the time, but they're never really going to do anything about it. That's another question to answer. You're not going to restrain them or anything like that. You have to answer those questions. And more than anything, you kind of hit on this too. You have to check yourself. Like if I'm already amped up in a high stress situation, I'm not going to be the one to go try to de-escalate a kid. I need someone to switch out. But like you said, men a lot of the time feel like it's my job to restrain. I'm the man. I have to do it. When a female staff who has a little bit better demeanor or even another male staff can jump in and verbally de-escalate. Restraints, they're like you said, they're needed in some cases, but the only time they're really needed is if they're a danger to themselves or someone else around them. But just taking them away from the trigger, it should always be the first step for safety reasons. So like you said, it sounds like Ryan was traumatized by it.
I mean, it's an overused word in the society, but like, he had PTSD. I mean, he clearly did. The trauma from that, it's funny. I don't see it today that much, but I know it's somewhere it's got to be. And then I was worried, I worried, when he got in relationships or, he doesn't drink or do anything like that. But if he was in a bar and somebody like maybe it's going to come out then, like all of this suppressed stuff that he had to deal with. But, I think he's been able to channel his energy and, it's advancing the story too much, but he really loves the outdoors and these, physical activities like that. And I think I don't know, he just has a very calm demeanor that had he stayed in this system and we gone down this path and he was living in a group home somewhere, like he would have been someone that they would have had to medicate so much to keep
Sure.
from somebody. And so, to if I can fast forward the story a little bit, what saved him ultimately was, when I was home and this and we stopped restraining him, the only way to de-escalate was to remove him from the situation. So I got in this habit when he'd get into it with his sister or something, I'd immediately throw him in the car and we would drive usually to Home Depot, and we drove to Home Depot and we'd walk around. Well, he also had this habit of wanting like the biggest thing that he could get his hands on. So I would leave there with like a giant pipe wrench. I'm not handy, like it's a tool I would never use in my life. And I'd be like $200 for, and I'm like, "All right, we can't be doing this forever."
So you go through the same stuff my wife does when she takes me to Home Depot or Lowe's. Always leaving with a tool I don't need, but she keeps me calm. That's how I avoid my restraints, is I need tools too.
We're doing that constantly. And one day, I mean, we live in the Northeast, so it's cold and there's
Sure.
snow. And I don't know why I threw him in the car and we drove to this little ski hill that's down this about 40 minutes away called Neshoba Valley. And I skied a little tiny bit as a kid on like YMCA trips. I hadn't skied in 25 years. I
Yeah.
didn't think I mean, I knew he might like it, but we had tried so many other sports and so many other activities, always ended in tears. I just figured, all right, at least I have a 40-minute ride there. It'll take a half hour for it to go bad, and then I'll have a 40-minute ride back. So like, well, for the worst case, we're going to kill 2 hours. And so we get there and we get through the rental process, and I never thought we would. And all of a sudden we're standing like the beginner ski hill has the airport people movers, like they call it the magic
Oh
carpet.
yeah.
It's like that thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those in the hill. And I stick him on that, and he's 7 years old at this point. And we get to the top of that, and I didn't really talk to him about skiing or anything. I start to explain like turn like you're riding a bike, and if you fall, and I sort of fall in the snow to show him how to get up, and he just looks at me and he shoots down the bottom of the hill and he banks a turn back to the line. And I was like, how the hell? Nobody, like, everybody in the beginner hill, they just fall. They go like 2 feet,
Yeah.
and there's people falling everywhere. And he just like
Just killed
navigated. And I'm like, oh, now I have to get down to the bottom, and I hadn't done it in 20 years. I like fumble my way down, and of course
That's
he cut the line, and I had to like
yeah.
pull, and it's like, so we had this pretty good day. We were there for a couple hours, and we got to the top of the hill. And he made it down, and he couldn't stop. He would just ski till he hit something or he landed in the
Yeah.
park. And it was the first thing we'd ever done that it didn't end in tears. It wasn't terrible. It was,
Sure.
and it
It
was,
clicked with them.
it clicked. And so we went
Yeah.
back the next day, and then we went to a bigger Massachusetts mountain the next week, and then we were in New Hampshire the next week, and Vermont the week after that, and we ended up in Colorado, and
Yeah.
and we end up going on this 10-year odyssey where we ski all over the country, all over the world. We've been to some crazy places, including Antarctica twice. We've skied there.
Jeez.
We've been to Chile and Argentina, and he's been to the North Pole, a place called Baffin Island. And you know, what I saw that day and what I continued to see was a kid who liked to take risks, but he was measured about it. He wasn't just wild and out of control. He looked at things. He loved the outdoor aspect of it. He loved skiing in the trees. He loved to explore and find new places where nobody else had skied. It wasn't
Yeah.
just wanting to go where everybody else went. And he got really good really fast. I was terrible, and he would always want to do the hardest runs wherever we went.
Yeah.
And I would be like white knuckling, like, just please God, let me get through this. And
Sure.
every time I'd fall, I'd say to him, Ryan, I have 9 lives. I'm down to like 3. Like, we can't
Yeah.
he was enjoying himself. And what I realized as a father, that the ride there or the chairlifts, when you're on a chairlift and there's no phones and you're just sitting there,
Mhm.
seeing this different kid, and it just clicked. I was like, he's not what everybody thinks he is. We
Yeah.
blew this. We made a terrible decision because he wouldn't sit still and he wouldn't listen. We put him on this pathway where he's clearly had some trauma, but he's a really, really good, thoughtful kid who's bright as hell, and he's got so much potential. And I just got to recreate the world like I do it with skiing,
Yeah.
and that'll be, I'll take that Ryan back to the other world, and he'll be the good Ryan. What I eventually came to realize was the Ryan I was seeing at the ski slope was Ryan. That's the
Mhm.
Ryan that I tried to squeeze out of him when he was a little kid, and I never should have. And so, I've had to learn a lot as a man, as a father. We've luckily kept a great relationship through it all, and we've been to some really cool places. And he got to flip the script on me because once he got to 9, 10, and 11, and we started going to really like some crazy places, he was so much better at it than me that he needed to keep me safe. And I'm also like the guy who never learns the ski map. Like I never ask for directions. Like I'm always
Yeah.
lost. He always knew where we were going. I never knew where we were going. And so I worried about the plane ride there, the hotel, and then once we got to the mountain, Ryan was in charge. And it for a kid that age to be in charge of his dad, I think it was a good experience for him. So
Well,
it's a cool story.
I tell you, I'm jealous because I'm one of the big things that I saw about your story that I love is I'm huge into skiing. Love it. Unfortunately, I'm in South Carolina, not a ton of good ski places up here. But I'm jealous he got that good that quick. Because I'll tell you, my first ever time skiing, I went with my little brother who had skied before. Again, never been on a slope in my life. My first place I ever go is in Whistler, Canada, and which is, it's an Olympic ski resort. So we go, and like I said, go up magic carpet. I'm able to stay up, and I have no idea what blue routes are, green routes, don't know the jargon. So my little brother is like, all right, you're doing really great. Do you want to go down a couple of the blue routes? I thought that was like maybe a step above bunny.
Yeah.
And dude, I spent I've never been in that much pain before.
Yeah,
never have skied in my life. Going down an Olympic ski resort hurts so bad. But
it's fun.
I'm kind of like what you said with Ryan, so driven. I can't fail at something. So I just kept going and going and going. Anyway, but skiing, I'm with you all on that.
That's the normal ramp up. For
coolest
most
things.
people, it's like 2 years to really be comfortable. And
but I'm glad he was able to pick it up. And it sounds like kind of what you said is he has that risk taker mentality, which, like I said, if it's honed to something, is amazing because he's got a skill a lot of people don't have, where they're scared of making progress, scared of trying something new. And it sounds like when he's give it to him in the right way, it's something he embraces. But building his confidence too, he's doing something his dad doesn't know how to do. He sees all these people falling. People are, I'm sure, telling him how good he is at something. And sometimes that's just it. He's been hearing from teachers in schools that you're a rough kid, you're a violent kid, all this stuff. And now he's finally hearing, how are you so good at something? This is amazing. How are you picking this up so quick? And in a lot of experiences I've had, it's like, as soon as you get a kid whose confidence is at a zero, you're going to see things spike, but slowly you can build that confidence up and that self-worth up. Just all of a sudden that willingness to cooperate, or that trust is getting built, or him, when he gets a new task, he's not automatically thinking he's going to suck at it. It's like, I can do this. I can just ski down a 20,000 foot mountain. I can go do a simple school activity and things like that. So that's pretty amazing. And it's just so awesome because people really, it's like, I've worked with so many parents that are in similar situations that you guys were in, and they're so fixated on them doing well in school, doing well socially, doing everything everyone else can do. And they expect the kid to be able to make the same progress in the same way, or they're not normal. But it's kind of like, here the example is, if you could think of something way out of the box that you think, skiing, how's that ever going to help with your social skills? How's that ever going to help in school? But building that confidence with a awesome activity, or like you said, something he looks forward to. I'm sure being on top of a mountain, all those sensory triggers, all that loud noises just go away. And he's just thinking with himself or with you, building that relationship with dad, which is huge. But just getting rid of all the noise, getting rid of all the people telling you you're not normal, you're not going to make it, and you're on top of a mountain by yourself doing something 99% of the population can't do. And I wish more people would think that, because we always try to push them as like, forget about the math, forget about the language arts, forget about things that I know you want them to be able to do. Let's just find anything that they enjoy and they can build their confidence with, whether that's
that. Absolutely. There's it's surprising. Like a lot of the bad decisions are really, I think, in the beginning, or what you said, our expectation was that Ryan would do better than we did. So for Ryan to do better than we did, Ryan needed to go to Harvard. Ryan needed to be an investment banker. Ryan needed to be, private equity or a doctor or something, and when he wouldn't be the best kid in the preschool, like, oh my God, we've got to fix this.
Yeah.
but what we missed was like all of his strengths, that the other kids didn't have, were going to serve him well eventually. And it really, we lucked into skiing because it did play to his strengths. But once, you're on the hill, okay, sure. He was, he was athletic. He was able to go down. He wasn't afraid of heights. But like all the stuff that led up to getting there. I mean, that's what I would say to the school when they would say, well, he's doing an activity he likes. That's why he's behaving. I said, do you know what it's like to go through Logan Airport at 5 in the morning and we switch, flights, and then we get like carry ski gear and we check, hotel and drive up some slope and like the,
Yeah.
snow driven roads and like hope you don't crash and get there at midnight and, time difference and then, waiting in lines and
It-
every lines are tough and like, he didn't like food at this place or that place. Like there's a lot that goes into this. And like I'm
yeah.
saying, he's doing all that. But then even while he was there, the stuff he was learning, like I mean, school was so bad for Ryan. Everything he knows, he's almost self-taught. But he was going on the internet and he was researching all of the resorts. He knew geography better than I did. He would know,
Yeah, absolutely.
he would know Whistler. He would know what part of Canada it was in and know how we would get there. He'd know every, the Whistler connects to Blackcomb and then we've got to go this way and the best trail is on this one. And then, the angle of the slope and like math, like things that played a part in it, snow science, weather, and dealing with disappointment. The one thing about skiing, sometimes you get there and the conditions aren't great, or that it snows so much you can't even go out. And we was able to handle things that schools were saying to us he couldn't do. He can't even
Yeah.
go to the bathroom without an aid. He can't, if he gets one wrong on his test, he tears up his paper. And it's like, I know that he can do that stuff, and
Yeah.
the die has already been cast because you decided based on how he was in first grade that he was going to be this way in fifth grade, and they're reading those same reports that made him out to be this really almost violent, aggressive kid, which was like so far from the truth.
Yeah.
And I had proof, but my proof was in the middle of a mountain where it was only he and I, and nobody else was there to see it. So it was like it took a while for me to finally convince
Yeah.
my wife that he, and then to convince everybody else. So
Yeah. It's like Ryan, he sounds extremely environmental, but he's going to respond to his environment. I've worked with kids similar to Ryan, where it is, they're really interested in what they're interested in, not really interested in what the environment's doing. But we would learn if the environment became interested in what he's interested in. So, like, if the first thing a staff member or his teacher would say to him when he walked in was, did you do any skiing? What did you do? And spend the first 10 minutes asking him with enthusiasm, what did you do skiing? Oh my gosh, I could never do that. How do you do that? And then your whole environment's changed. Then he's beaming with pride, and then he's going to be more willing to talk about things he doesn't want to talk about. We've had kids like that where they're super into like fishing and things like that. And then we try to incorporate that into what we're trying to teach them. Kind of like you said, is we're going to measure the depth of the water. Is that going to affect how fish do? What do fish do at this time? But they're so excited to learn things they enjoy. They almost don't even realize we're throwing in things that we need them to learn that they say they hate all the time. But as kids like Ryan, if their environment is not automatically supportive, he's already made his decision. It's going to be a rough day. But like I said, if he's hit with all these ski questions as soon as he walks in, then your confidence is built, and then you can kind of ease into the unpreferred stuff. And if he has an episode, who cares? It's just going to happen.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
And
Who cares?
those kids, like if they're spectrum-y, like the fishing kid, you're gonna have to talk about the digestive tract of a mackerel. Like they're gonna know everything about every fish,
everything.
and you've got to smile and listen. And
well, you got to sit there and take notes and act like you're just so. Even if it's the most boring thing in the world,
yes,
make them feel like it's all about validation. I mean, it's kind of I tell when I'm doing any type of training and stuff, if you're not validating what a kid is trying to tell you, it's kind of, or if they're having problems, like Ryan could tell them, I don't want to do this because of this, this, and this. And to an adult who's neurotypical or whatever, yeah, it might sound like a ridiculous reason to, or it might even sound like he's wanting to get out of something. But who knows, like one day that really might be an issue for Ryan. And for you to look at him and go, that's no big deal, you shouldn't be acting like that. You completely invalidated his feelings.
Yeah.
Complete. And he's never going to come to you again before he has an issue, before he wants to become aggressive. He's just going to, because he doesn't think he cares. It's a lot like, I use my wife as an example for this. She is in med school. really kicking butt in a lot of things, but she'll come home to me and want to vent and want to tell me some things I've gone on. And I'm a fixer. I'm going to tell you how to fix your problems. And that's what I would do for her. I would just say, oh, that's not that. Why don't you try doing this? And then she'd never talk to me again for the rest of the day. And she don't want to sit there and listen to me and validate. She wants me to tell her how sorry I am and how everyone else around her is stupid and she's a genius and they should all just listen to her.
Exactly.
But kids like Ryan are kind of the same. It's like, if
true.
they are upset, they're upset.
Yeah.
And validate it. Even if it sounds crazy sometimes, but environments and relationships are just so fragile for kids like that. And it's just, I mean, I'm so glad he was doing well. Was he, I know you kind of mentioned the medication. Was he put on a lot of medication at a younger age?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because sometimes I forget part of the story. But I think for parents and for educators, it's a critical piece to the story, because right away, everybody wants to medicate, right? So, with Ryan, like every kid, the first one was the Ritalin, based one, which he did not react well to. It almost acted like, caffeine or something. He just sped him up.
Oh, yeah.
So it didn't work. And then, you eventually end up on the SSRIs, and then we ended up on some antipsychotics, and we ended up on some mood stabilizers. And at any one time he was on 2 or 3. He was on Lamictal. Lamictal caused him to have a rash reaction, which was terrible. We had that happen while we were on a plane in Utah, and and I knew it was really serious, and there was nothing I could do. But we landed, and he ended up on lithium, and he got really heavy. He blew up like a balloon, and we were told like this is the only way he could function. And finally, around 7th grade, we ended up with a different psychiatrist who, really just drilled down on every decision we'd ever made. And he kept saying, "Why is Ryan bipolar?" And I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And, "Well, why are you medicating him like a bipolar kid? Like, what he's on this cocktail of drugs?" And we just, 1 turned to 2, turned to 3, and we were told by the other psychiatrist in the schools that he couldn't function without it. And I always questioned it, because when I went on ski trips, half the time I would forget to give him the meds because we were busy, and I'd be like, "I don't know, he doesn't seem any different without it." And I was glad when this psychiatrist pushed back, and I didn't want him on it at all. And I was really, and I had seen this different kid, and I knew it was going to take a little convincing, for my wife to say, he's going to be a nun. Like, all of a sudden we're just going to, and psychiatrist luckily was like, "No, we're going to wean off one at a time, and we'll knock one out. Then we'll start on the other one." And it took a year or so to really wean him on.
Sure.
And he was not any different. And at that point, he hadn't gone through puberty, because I think it had messed with his body so much. And so he went through puberty. He shot up. He got thin and muscular and athletic, and the body he was supposed to have. And girls started to notice him, and he was always with girls, and he was this little round ball that nobody. All of a sudden he was, he had facial hair, and he was a different guy.
A guy, very good. And girls can be a big motivating factor. I'm saying they don't want to. A guy they got to worry about freaking out all the time. So sometimes it's like, and that's all environmental too. And it's like, I mean, it's learning life. It's, if you want a girlfriend, you better be chill most of the time.
Peer pressure was a big factor. I think that was the biggest change, the behavioral, modifier, I guess. Like, all of a sudden when he became aware that, the other kids will react if you have a meltdown. Like, they'll think of you differently. And it really took, but I think he was on so much medication. I don't, sometimes I think he was numb to that, and I think he was not as aware of his surroundings. So it took a while, and he talked, when we wrote the book, and he was reliving all this. Like, he would say, he finally came off medicines if like we couldn't go skiing because it rained, and he would start crying, and I'm like, God, this kid is so emotional. And he had all that had been muted and bottled up by this meds for so long. All of a sudden, he was like, waterfall. Like things happen, we cry, we're happy, we're sad, and it took a while for him to sort of process all that. So it was interesting. I think now
that's awesome.
Now he won't take an aspirin. Now he won't take anything. And if he's sick, and I'm like, "You need an antibiotic, buddy. You have an ear infection. And he's so against any form of medication, which I can't blame him, because he was on too much that he should have never been on. And again, that's decisions we made that we shouldn't have made.
Yeah, medication is such a quick fix people think it is, but like you kind of said, if if everything else under the moon's not tried and medication is the first thing you do, it usually leads to so many more problems because especially someone that's that young, their brain and personalities and ways of thinking about the world is finished developing. And so if you just numb that, then it's almost like you're hitting pause on their development. And all of a sudden you get them on medication at 7 and then hit pause. And then, okay, it's 13. Let's try to take you off of it. They're still going to react to things, I feel like, at a 7-year-old level, which is going to be more reactive and a little bit more dramatic. And it's just, I'm not saying medication is not effective if it's done the correct way and it's done slowly and it's done, like I said, not giving you a whole pharmacy at one time.
I know. It's like restraint, I think, in a way. It's to me, it's a last resort, but I think there are people who, if they didn't have it, they wouldn't be able to function. And that was how the therapist who took him off would pose it to us and say, if Ryan wasn't on lithium, would he kill himself? And he'd be like, what do you mean? Like, no, I don't think he would. And he's like, well, why are you giving it to him then? Like justify it. Tell me why he needs that medication. Because and it's like when you start thinking in those terms, it's for a teacher, I think I'd rather have this kid sit still than not sit still. Mm-hmm. Okay, but like, what if the side effects of that aren't, like you're going to drop dead from a side effect, but weight gain, cholesterol, high blood pressure, like, those will eventually, harm you or kill you you'll shorten your life, if nothing else. And so a lot of these kids, you see them in schools when they're on, Seroquel or some of these, they're huge, right? I mean, it's really not a healthy body type to go through forward in life. And they eat, poorly, I think, as a result of it too. So for him, it changed everything. He became this, now he's Mr. Health, and he eats really clean and he exercises and he's in nature a lot. And it's changed the way I look at him and think, all right, I used to laugh like when he would do this like crazy yoga stuff, and I'm like, really? Like he'd be like chanting, or he'd be like, doing his meditation. And now it's like I look at him and he's so healthy, and like I'm gonna start doing that. I gotta embrace my life.
That is his medication. I mean, like I said, it's the same thing. When you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you're about to blow up, instead of popping a pill, you strike a yoga pose and do some breathing. And I firmly believe if you can avoid a medication by doing something that just changes your mindset in a situation, you should try it. But I mean, again, I've worked with kids where medication is absolutely necessary. And when it's done right, it is very beneficial. And that's awesome. But I know he's probably got to stay fit, because I saw, I was just doing some research here, and he's now leading ski trips and rock climbing trips out in Lord knows where now. Is that true?
Yeah. So he took to rock climbing as much as skiing, and I never thought there'd be anything he loved as much as skiing. But he was always looking for a summer activity. He started rock climbing and really fell in love with it. So he wants to be a professional rock climbing guide and a professional ski guide. The track for rock is a little faster, so he's actually out in Red Rocks, which is outside of Vegas, getting his advanced rock guide course done. After that, he'll be, it's essentially a licensed instructor. He'll have to do one more exam, but he's pretty close to being he did guide professionally the last couple of summers. Depending where you are is what level you can take clients at. He's going to be now at the highest level. Ski guiding, it takes a little longer because you have to get a lot of avalanche training in. So we live in, we get snow up here, but he really would need to park himself, I think, out west, for the season and really get that last piece to the puzzle done. But he's getting closer. He's he lives in a van. He's got a girlfriend. He's living the life.
Living in a van. He got a girlfriend that don't mind the van. That's true love right there. I don't know many girls.
They park the vans close to each other, and she's cut from the same cloth. She's definitely outdoorsy as well.
Man, and it's awesome. That's killer. So he's doing well now.
Yeah,
so
really well.
Like it's that. See, and it's just he found his passion. And it sounds like, if you're I've been on trips with guides, and they got to be the calmest people ever, because you are literally taking people up a cliff, dealing with probably people panicking, stressful situations. And I guarantee you think back at that 7-year-old that would just have a complete meltdown at the smallest trigger, to now probably dealing with some pretty crazy people and dealing with chaos. And you have to be the calmest one.
So true.
Around. And that's amazing to know that it's just, you've got to find something that you're so invested in, you're willing to make strides in other areas to reach these goals. Because he probably sat there and was like, if I'm going to lead people up a mountain, I probably need to stay chill most of the time. So I'll go do these things people have told me to do that I like to do so I can reach my goal. And I guess kind of like what you said earlier, it's when you focus on a kid's interests, people think, oh, you're giving into it. You're bribing them a little bit. You're just giving them what they want. I tell people all the time, it's different from bribing someone than making something relate to somebody. Or if I got to sit there and let you do an activity on understanding snowfall for 30 minutes before class starts, because that's going to get you in the right mindset, why would I not want to do that?
Yeah.
But so many teachers, and I hate it because I said that's where I come from is education, but it is such a, you're going to do it my way. And if it's not my way, it's wrong. This is my classroom. We're going to do it my way, period. When it's just like, okay, if I give in here and there, all of a sudden my classroom runs perfectly well. Why not give in a little bit to have a well-run classroom? And I'm glad that I can see some things changing in classroom environments where it is more of, we're going to cater to the kid more than they're going to be expected to form to my classroom a little bit. And hopefully we get there. And I am curious because people don't tend to ask kids this when they have these types of episodes. Did he ever explain to you why he's having these? Like, was there ever reasons why he's having these explosive moments, whether it was just a crazy reason? Because when parents want to tell me things that are happening, rarely do I ever hear, well, he says it's happening because of this, this, and this. And I want to look at him and go, well, have you asked him why it's happening? Like, we try to figure his view on things first, and then we can kind of it could be as easy as just making a very simple change. But did he ever like give you reasons why or anything like that?
Perfectionist, and he was volatile. But by volatile, he was willing to express emotion when it didn't go his way. I mean, he wasn't a kid who kept it bottled up, or a kid who, you know, was willing to let it sort of roll off his back. Like if he wanted everything to be perfect, and when it wasn't, he would get upset.
Yeah.
And as we would have learned if we just given it more time.
Sure.
Eventually, he would have modulated that to, okay, I can't cry in front of my friends. Like, and he would have kept it bottled up, and he would have gone home and maybe been a nightmare for an hour or something. You know, like a lot of kids are, and like most kids are. Most kids will hold it together at school, and then they come home and they get the crap out of their parents because they you know, really had all this emotion suppressed for the whole day. And you know, he was one of those kids that in the moment he just let it fly. Like if he was upset, he was gonna scream, yell, cry. He never would, you know, targeted anyone. He was never like a physical kid in terms of violence, but you know, if he had something in his hand and something didn't go his way, that thing was going flying across the room. Like he was gonna throw it. You know, and then he would feel bad afterward. Like, you broke that rye. That's terrible.
Yeah.
He just couldn't stop himself, you know, and I got to raise two kids. My daughter was the opposite. She was very typically developing, you know, went to all the right schools. But as a parent, once Ryan found his passion and was so driven to you know, excel at it, he became an easier kid to parent than my daughter. You know, my daughter it caused me way more stress in high school because I knew she was one of these kids who really hadn't found it yet or figured it out. And she was okay, you know, pretty good at sports. She was pretty good at drama and music, but you know, it wasn't like, I never felt like that was the only thing she ever wanted to do. And, you know, and just, it caused me more anxiety, I think, than Ryan. Once Ryan knew what he wanted to do, and he that was it. Like his life was going to be about that. And everything else was taken off the table of, you know, I know as a lawyer, I was a lawyer that hated practicing law, and then I had to pivot to something else. I mean, how many people do you know that have had to change careers, or, you know, people move, get divorced, like life happens, right? Things don't go the way they think they're going to go. With Ryan, I knew like he's got it. Like it's I don't know what his life's going to look like, but it's going to be outside on a mountain, hanging off a cliff somewhere, you know, and he's going to be happy.
He's figuring out. Plus, you have the daughter's always going to cause the dad more stress. That's just how it is.
Oh, God.
I know I come from my dad, bless his heart. He's got 4 boys and then 1 baby girl. So we're all married out of the house, and he's got 1 girl just about to turn 21, still in college. And
it's tough.
You could tell he still don't know what to do. They can't raise 4 boys and 1 girl coming in. So it's crazy. But I know you mentioned briefly your book that I believe you and Ryan co-authored together. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Ryan at the point when we were on the first Antarctica trip. We're on this boat and we don't have Wi-Fi and we're sitting there and we have a lot of time to kill. It takes 2 days to sail over to where you can ski. So we're just kind of rocking and rolling in the Drake Passage, like these 30-foot waves, and everything in the room would fall, and it was a lot of time to kill. And I said to him, I said, we've always talked about writing a book, about, your story. And I said, I think I'm going to do it, Ryan. And I said, but I think we have to do it together. I think you have to write as well. And I said, let's do this while we're on this trip. Like all we have is our phones. I said, um, I'm going to just start writing. And I'm going to start with like kindergarten, and we'll go preschool, first grade, and all the schools you went to. And then I'll write about all the places we skied. And I'm just going to do a little, stream of consciousness. I said, you do the same thing. Like, just start like banging out on your phone. And of course, he didn't do it because he was busy. But when we got back, I had written like 50 pages of drill, and I got him to sort of, I made a bullet point list and said, look, just write whatever you can think of on this subject and this subject and this subject. And he did it. He did it over a few months, and then we exchanged what I had written, what he had written, and I was blown away with what he had written. His recall is unbelievable. He remembered everything, and it was actually hard to read because all this trauma he had to sort of talk about,
Sure.
and I knew I played a part in. And my version, I was so angry with the doctors and the teachers, I just went in for revenge. Like, I was like on the pages, I
Some
was like
spite writing.
just flying. And he hated what I wrote because he kept saying to
Yeah.
me, Dad, I'm fine. Like, I look at me. I like life is. This is not the story I want to tell. This is not a sad story. It's not a tragedy. Like,
Mhm.
and I was like, you know what? He's right. And I went back, I trashed it, and I went back and started over. And I rewrote from that perspective of like, this is a really good story of a kid who was
Yeah.
resilient and survived. And no matter what I threw at him and all the mistakes I made as a dad, and I can admit to all of them in this book, but he ended up okay because of him, because he didn't want to give up on himself, and I didn't give up on him as a result. And so we wrote. I never thought we would get published. We started showing it to people, and everybody tells you it's good, but I knew it really wasn't. And
Sure.
I found an editor an editorial consultant, just through LinkedIn. I was like doing some searches. I found this woman, Lindsay Newton, and she was really, really good. And she taught me how to turn. I mean, I was a pretty good writer, but I'd never written dialogue, and she taught me how to turn things
Mhm.
into conversations. Just it's so much better for the reader. And we went back and
Yeah.
did another round, and then we started pitching agents, and we got an agent right away, and we got a publisher that was interested. And I mean, trust me, it's the money I made, I think we could have spent at the grocery store. It's not like it's one trip. Like, it's not a lot. You don't write books but I knew it would help somebody. I knew some parent
Yeah.
would read this and say, and you see these kids, right? Their parents are hopeless. Like,
Yeah.
they've lost all hope. They read his story and think, oh, Jesus, this kid was in that same position. He was in a mental hospital
Mhm.
for 2 weeks. He was in 4 therapeutic schools.
Yep.
And look where he is now. Like, it's a
Yeah.
and, anything can happen if you have hope. And so, the people, everybody's read it, who's like it, and I've gotten a great reaction to it. And I think for him it was cathartic. I think for me it was really cathartic. And
For sure.
it was kind of a fun exercise. The last piece I'll just say, we've also done a documentary which you haven't seen, but
Really? Okay.
it's called 91. Ryan, there's 91 backcountry ski runs in the Presidential Range in New Hampshire. Nobody
Mhm.
had done all 91 of them, and Ryan's the first person, we're pretty sure, to do all 91. And
Wow.
so we got to film the last two. And then while we were filming, the filmmaker and I sort of given him the backstory, and he had read the book, and he wanted to do a lot about Ryan's childhood. Ryan was somewhat reluctant. He really wanted to focus on this ski part. But we got to the point where Ryan opened up, and
Yeah.
it was really compelling on film. And my wife's in it, my daughter's in it, a bunch of crazy ski people we met along the way are in it. And it's called 91. We're just starting. We pitched a bunch of film festivals. Not sure how
Sure.
many we'll get in, but it'll end up on YouTube at some point. So look for
I was
that
about to
soon.
say you'll get more traction from there than anywhere, and that's amazing. Dude, that's so cool.
It's
I'm about
very
to
it was
say
a cool
that
experience. It really was. It was fun
that
to do.
man, that is killer. Well, I mean, I know, like you said, so many parents kind of go through this and deal with it, and like you said, it's a hopeless feeling to where you feel like you're failing your kid. You feel like you are trying everything and you're making all these mistakes, and you feeling like your kid's gonna grow up to hate you because you feel like you didn't do it right. And then they grow up and you probably have one of the best father-son relationships anybody could even hope for. What advice might you have for a parent in a similar situation?
Yeah. I'd say first off, you know your kid better than anybody. I mean, I've sat in
Mhm.
those rooms and I've looked across the desk and looked up at the wall and it's Harvard, 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 and thinking, all right, this is the leading parenting expert. You know, we were so lucky to be in this office. That person, the second you walk out of that office, another family's going to walk in. Like they're never going to lay awake at night like you do about your own kids. So trust your instincts. I didn't trust my instincts. I made bad decisions. That's one. Two is, finding the passion seems easy when you finally find it. But like I said, we failed at a lot. I mean, there was a lot of tears with baseball bats, hockey sticks, golf clubs, tennis rackets. I mean, anything we seemed to try ended up, and it's, you never know what it's going to be. And for me, I was not an outdoorsy person. I never thought I'd end up as a skier. That wasn't on my radar, believe me. And here I am, and our rock climbing as well. And I think don't, just because I played baseball, I thought Ryan would play baseball, and I think I
Yeah.
pushed a lot of that on him. And I should have, Ryan should have been in the Boy Scouts when he was a little kid. But that wasn't something I knew a lot about. So sometimes as a parent, you've got to do a little homework and figure out what your kid's strengths are, and it might be something. If it's the violin, you might have to sit there for a lot of concerts and listen to kids play bad violin. But if it makes them happy,
Hey,
it's going to make you happy. Trust me. So that's the second piece I'd say.
man, that's just killer because it is. It's just if you're a parent, you're a teacher, you're a caretaker, you signed up for making this person's life better. That's it. I
Yep.
mean, you signed up for it. If you decided to have the kid, hopefully, or you're a teacher, that's what you signed up for. It's
Yep.
not, they're not, their job is not to make your life easier. Their job is not to make sure you're doing well. It's vice versa. And if you're open to things and you have a good mindset and you're willing to try things, you don't look at everything as a failure. You just figured out one thing that didn't work. It's going to amount to some awesome stuff. And I think your story's such an awesome example of that to where I know it's got to reach everyone else, but where can they find your book? Where can they, any other resource that you would
Yeah,
recommend,
definitely.
but anything?
Thank you. The book is Without Restraint. It's available on Amazon. There's an audio version on the audio platforms. That's good as well. I'm an audiobook guy. I mean, and most people
Yeah.
have done the time to read, but it's really it goes fast, and we wrote separately, so it's from both our perspectives folded in together. So there's two
It's
different
awesome.
voices, a different voice for Ryan, a different voice for Rob, and in the text, Ryan's in italics and I'm in plain text, so it's evident who's saying what. I think it works well as a format. We're easy to find. Ryan's a great follow. If you find him on Instagram, he's at extreme underscore Ryan underscore DeLena. If you look up Extreme Ryan, he's pretty prevalent all over
Pop
the
up.
internet. So he's a great follow on YouTube. He'll answer all your questions if you have outdoor questions. If you ever go rock climbing in Acadia, Maine, he's a great guide, a ski guide. As a parent, I'm pretty easy to find as well. As an author, I get a lot of these emails out of the blue that say, "Here's my kid. He's done, he's in this therapeutic school. He's on this medication. I don't know what to do." And those are hard emails to get because I don't know them that well to be comfortable like giving them advice on what to do, but I'm usually pretty good at telling them what not to do because
Yeah.
I can admit to those mistakes. So reach out, call me out of the blue. I mean, I've made a lot of friends, I think, along the way that I may never meet, but we're talking about our kids, and I feel for them when they have setbacks and I hear about it. It's like, oh God, I was so hopeful that it was going to go better, and it's hard being a parent, even if your kid is the most typically developing, neurotypical,
Yeah.
normal, whatever the word you want to use. It's still stressful. It's still hard. So
Oh,
it's nice to have a
100%.
resource of someone who understands, I think.
Absolutely. And then listeners, also all the links and everything Robert just shared with us are going to be available on our website as well. And we're going to link everything in the description of the episode too. So very quick way to find everything that was just mentioned because it is some awesome resources, especially if you want to go rock climbing or take a ski trip. Sounds like we got a link to that too.
Definitely.
But Robert, man, I could not thank you enough for coming on with us today. Your story inspires me, and I know it's going to continue to inspire so many people. So happy Ryan is doing so awesome, living his best life, and you guys have formed just an awesome relationship. I can't thank you enough, brother.
Thank you for the opportunity. It was really great. I mean, you get it, you live it, you know it, and I can tell. And it's interesting to get your perspective. That was great to hear as well.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, we thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope you took something from it. Leave a comment, ask a question. We want to hear from you guys. What spoke to you and what you want to hear about in future episodes as well. And don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and make sure you listen for future episodes being dropped. But until then, guys, it's so nice to get around the table and have another unfiltered conversation. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.